This is the Toyota Corolla Cross, which is a car that perfectly represents the shift towards crossovers and SUVs. Since after all, the Corolla Cross nameplate is fairly new. It's also the vehicle that made hybrids mainstream in the Philippines. And with that in mind, is the Corolla Cross the best way to enter the world of electrification? What we're driving today is the Corolla Cross Hybrid GR Sport. And because of that, I think it would be a better idea if we talked about how this car drives first, just to see whether opting for the GRS actually makes the drive sportier. Powering the Corolla Cross GR Sport is a 1.8-liter Toyota hybrid system, though it must be noted that there's also a base 1.8G variant that doesn't come with the hybrid electric powertrain. Also unique to the GR Sport is a slightly firmer sport-tuned suspension. Now that this car has the so-called GR Sport suspension, does it actually make any difference pagdating sa kanang driving experience? In reality, actually, siguro baka may onte. Siguro I have to drive the cars back to back, the non-GRS and this GRS variant. Pero as far as my experience with the other Corolla Cross historically, there's not a lot of difference sa totoo lang. The ride's still good. Kasi usually with sport suspension, it would make the ride firmer. Pero the ride's still good pa rin eh. Siguro, because there's a bit of firmness, mas less na yung movements niya. So, as a result, yung ride niya is much more settled. And in terms of body roll, which we're gonna be exploring later as we go through twisty roads, mas onti yung body roll niya. But then again, baka placebo effect lang siya eh. So, yeah, I really have to drive the cars back to back. But as far as the driving experience goes, it's basically it's the Corolla Altis, no? So, na pinataas mo yung ride height niya, which is what this Corolla Cross is naman talaga. So, here on the highway, the hybrid powertrain does its best to run in pure electric mode. Though, syempre not as much as in the city. Kasi kapag nasa city ka, since mas mabagal takbo mo doon, mas aggressive siyang maging pure electric mode compared itong nasa highway tayo ngayon. So, at an average of 19.9 kilometers per liter, 20.3 actually, that's the best that I've ever achieved. Dude, yeah. For a subcompact crossover SUV, actually, by any measure, 19.9, or actually kaka-20 na lang ngayon, nag 20 kilometers per liter siya ngayon lang. Walang kupas, walang no questions asked. Talagang, if you really want the most fuel efficient way to travel, a Toyota hybrid is really the way to go. And not only that, but in terms of refinement then, this TNGA platform talaga, based on my experience with past Toyotas in this platform, talagang maganda yung rigidity niya, maganda yung solidity, maganda yung refinement ng kanyang road and wind noise. And ang maganda rin dito sa platform niya is ang bagal ng Ford EcoSport na ito nasa overtaking lane. Road and wind noise is well kept to a minimum, and talagang this chassis really feels solid and rigid. Talagang yun ang gusto ko sa TNGA platform niya, no? And, you know, for overtaking, okay, so combined horsepower is around 120 lang, tapos yung torque niya is actually pretty good yung figure naman niya kasi you have the assistance of the electric motors, no? So, ang nangyayari, in terms of response, if you're gonna overtake, ang responsive niya actually, it really responds well to your inputs. Yes, this is a CVT, so no pretensions in this transmission. Talagang in Toyota's tuning sa CVT nila, talagang it really doesn't pretend like, doesn't mimic a traditional automatic, no? So it really doesn't like do fake gear shifts and stuff. So talagang it will really drone the cabin with engine noise kapag uma-accelerate ka. But I mean, that's pretty much the case with every other car with a CVT rin naman, or at least most other cars with a CVT. But yeah, ayun, ang advantage naman with this CVT is nga, it delivers excellent fuel economy. Yun nga, we're currently doing 20 kilometers per liter na at this point. And yeah, it's really the most fuel efficient way to travel sa panahon ngayon ng mga hybrid ng Toyota. And then here in the highway, the steering is on the stable side of things. Which is of course a good thing, but sa, you don't do a lot of steering corrections kasi Parang hindi siya ganun ka-sensitive sa mga galawan mo, which is always a good thing pag nasa highway ka, diba? Kasi you don't do a lot of lane corrections and all that. So it's a relaxing car to drive out here in the expressway, itong Toyota Corolla Cross GR Sport. And now driving here onto much more normal roads, as in yung mga everyday city driving natin. And this is where you're gonna see the benefits even more of owning a hybrid. So dito sa palibot ng Clark, we're just driving, tootling around the town, around the city rather. And this is where the hybrid powertrain shines even more, since at this point it actually tries to, it aggressively does its best to run in pure electric mode, since kapag yung mga ganitong low speeds lang naman, hindi naman siya masyadong nag-call for the gasoline engine to kick in. And so with that, kapag let's say itong mga gumagapa ka lang sa stoplight, sa mga intersections na ganyan, talagang for the most part, it's the electric motors that are doing the job of driving the vehicle. And as a result of that, the Corolla Cross, itong nasa intersection na to, for example, so sa mga ganitong sitwasyon, nangyayari dito is there's a higher proportion of electric driving compared to when you're on the highway. But still, out on the highway, ang fuel economy mo isa sa 20 kilometers per liter, but here in the city, it increases to mga around 23, 26 kilometers per liter. So talagang it's gonna be really fuel efficient, especially if you live in Metro Manila. And kapag nasa stop and go traffic ka pa nga, actually, then mas fuel efficient pa ang mga hybrid. And then now we're gonna be driving the Corolla Cross GR Sport through a set of twisty roads. And is the Corolla Cross actually sporty pagdating dito sa mga twisty roads na to? I'll be honest, probably not. So the problem here is, so okay, the responsive powertrain is there, responsive nga yung pagka-hybrid niya. But again, the CVT is not exactly tuned for sporty driving. And though the steering is reasonably responsive, it doesn't exactly have a lot of feedback. Actually, it's the same case with the Corolla Altis. So ang sabi ko sa Corolla Altis, it has a potential to be a sport sedan because the steering in that car felt reasonably responsive, though in terms of feel, hindi siya kasing rich ng sa Mazda 3, or in the case of the Corolla Cross, hindi siya kasing rich ng, let's say, sa Mazda CX-30, where you're actually really able to tell what's happening to the front wheels, whether you're losing grip or not. And in terms of suspension, since saka GR Sport suspension nga ito, maybe there's less body roll, but again, it's maybe placebo, so I really have to drive the normal Corolla Cross in this GR Sport ng back to back. But and by the way, itong Corolla Cross, by the way, compared to the Corolla Altis, is much more prone, I guess, to understeer. And that's actually because, ngayon ko lang na-realize din pala, compared to the Corolla Altis, which felt grippier, it's really grippy, as in that car really had high grip limits. Yung Corolla Altis, itong Corolla Cross, it's easier to reach its grip limits, no, as you're driving through a set of twisties. And ngayon ko lang na-realize, the reason for that pala is naka-torsion beam rear suspension nga pala itong Corolla Cross. So on a handling perspective, this is actually less sporty pa compared to the Corolla Altis. In terms of ride quality, I can't really tell any difference for the most part in terms of yung, kasi siyempre the Corolla Altis has much more sophisticated rear suspension compared to this Corolla Cross. For the most part, it feels pretty much the same in terms of ride. Okay pa naman yung tuning ng torsion beam rear suspension ito. It's more on the handling part talaga, where the Corolla Altis has the noticeable advantage. Kasi talagang when I push the Corolla Altis sa corners, it felt stable, it felt grippy. Of course, combined with the fact that this rides higher compared to the Corolla Altis, kasi nga SUV to or a crossover. Yeah, talagang in terms of sportiness, the Corolla Altis has the potential to be a sport sedan, whereas itong Corolla Cross, it's really more of a comfort-oriented cruiser. Then lastly, the brakes. As usual with the hybrid electric vehicles or any kind of electrified vehicle that includes full electric cars, no? So this has regenerative braking. May ganun pa rin siyang spongy, sensitive feel kapag, let's say, nasa magbe-brakes ka. But, it's pretty much, it's not that bad. I mean, sakto lang. It's something that you're gonna get used to. It's more of an observation rather than a negative, actually. It's gonna be something that you're eventually gonna be used to as you drive an electrified vehicle. And the Corolla Cross is no exception. Yung kanyang hybrid powertrain and itong kanyang regenerative brakes. But for the most part, the brakes feel good naman. They feel progressive, they feel normal, except for the part ngayon nga, it has a bit of regenerative braking kasi nga it needs to charge the batteries dun sa kanyang braking, no? And yeah, that's pretty much the gist in terms of the driving experience of the Toyota Corolla Cross GRS. It's a comfortable, refined, super fuel-efficient crossover SUV. And sa mga panahong ito na mataas ang presyo ng gas, it's almost a no-brainer to get the Corolla Cross if fuel economy is your absolute priority in getting a subcompact SUV. This is now a good time to talk about the Corolla Cross's exterior design. As a whole, the Corolla Cross looks like a mini RAV4. But what we have here today is the GR Sport variant. And this gets you a unique front bumper and front grille, sporty 18-inch alloy wheels, satin silver Foss skid plates, a black contrasting roof, as well as clear LED taillights. That said, opting for the Corolla Cross GR Sport Hybrid adds more than 100,000 pesos to the standard hybrid model's price tag. Though at least in my opinion, it's a price I'm willing to pay for a much more handsome crossover SUV. But for most people, the standard hybrid model will suit them best. On top of those aesthetic upgrades, you also get a powered tailgate, which is one of the only few subcompact crossover SUVs to have such a feature. And with that in mind, it's now a good time to talk about the Corolla Cross's interior. So now that we're here inside the new Corolla Cross GRS, and if you're expecting an interior that looks significantly different compared to the normal Corolla Cross, then that's not actually the case. So upgrades compared to the normal Corolla Cross would be yung kanang GR Sport push button start, yung kanang GR Sport seats, GR Sport floor mats, and actually that's pretty much it. Then as for the overall interior design, for me it's on the boring side of things. It's not bad. In terms of material quality, it's actually pretty good. So you have soft touch here in the doors, on the dash. Itong door panels are also wrapped in leather. And maybe not as premium as the Mazda CX-30. That car for me is the class benchmark in terms of premium feel, yung Mazda CX-30. No? So, and being the GR Sport nga pala, there's more piano black stuff compared to the normal Corolla Cross instead of the silver stuff in the lower variants. That's one thing you might want to take note of. And also, in terms of ergonomics, it's pretty much standard Toyota. So you have a touchscreen here that's thankfully not anymore one of those aftermarket looking things that are locally sourced from, I think, AVT, locally sourced mga infotainment ng Toyota. Here in the case of the Corolla Cross, like every other new Toyota, this is now the true factory infotainment system that's really made by Toyota. So it's much better to use compared to the previous infotainment system. It looks okay in terms of resolution, not the best, but it's okay, much better than the previous locally sourced infotainment system. You also have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and of course, being a hybrid, then you can also see the animations ng kanyang hybrid powertrain dito, and that works in conjunction with the digital gauges na dito sa harap. Ito kanyang partly digital gauges, which is also configurable. And yeah, in terms of tech, okay naman yung tech niya. Not the most high-tech in terms of yung kanyang mga screens and stuff, but it's pretty good. It's ergonomic to use, it's easy to use. You still have knobs sa aircon niya and buttons for the aircon. User-friendly pa rin, which is always gonna be a good thing na you always have hard buttons sa separate sa infotainment system. Now, as for the back seats of the Toyota Corolla Cross GR Sport, in terms of legroom, I don't think it's as generous as the Corolla Altis, yung sedan, no? That car has a longer wheelbase than the Corolla Cross, weirdly enough, and that's reflected in the legroom, no? So I mean, it's okay. It's not what I would call as maluwag as the Honda HR-V. That for me is the class benchmark in terms of space. So yeah, legroom is pretty much okay. Not the best actually yung Maka D4, but okay lang naman sa akin. Width is actually pretty good. Maganda ang width niya since it's based on the Corolla. The platform pa rin naman in the GA Toyota TNGA-C platform. So in terms of width, okay siya, which it can really carry 3 adults comfortably. You also have rear aircon vents, 2 charging USB ports here, fast charging pa nga by the way. And then meron ka rin cup holder here mounted on the door. And of course, kanang center armrest, meron ka rin cup holder dito. Okay, that's good. Yung kanang windows go all the way down and are one touch up down nga pala even here at the rear seats. So yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of the rear seat practicality of the Toyota Corolla Cross GRS. And this is reflected, of course, in the other variants of the Corolla Cross. And then lastly, as for cargo space, the Toyota Corolla Cross offers 440 liters, which is about average for the class. Once you fold down the second row seats, this increases to nearly 1900 liters, though it must be noted that the seats don't completely fold flat. As a whole, the reasons are finally clear as to why the Toyota Corolla Cross made hybrids mainstream in the Philippines. And that's because the Corolla Cross is a well-engineered and well-thought-out vehicle. It's not exactly what you would call exciting, but at least in this GR Sport trim, it certainly bodes well to those looking for a fashion-forward and handsome crossover SUV. More importantly, however, is the fact that it's an affordable crossover SUV with a dose of electrification. And sa panahon ngayon na mataas ang presyo ng krudo, the appeal of the Corolla Cross is hard to ignore. The Toyota Corolla Cross starts at 1.3 million pesos, though we wouldn't bother on this non-hybrid base model, since after all, a base-level Honda HR-V is simply better equipped. Instead, we recommend stepping up to the hybrid altogether, which retails for 1,665,000 pesos. And that gets you stuff like synthetic leather interior, full LED headlights, bigger 18-inch wheels, and the full suite of Toyota Safety Sense advanced driver assistance features, which includes automatic emergency braking, full speed adaptive cruise control, blind spot warning, rear cross traffic alert, and one of the best lane centering systems in the industry. Personally, however, I would splurge for the top-of-the-line GRS model, because at least for me, the handsome looks are simply hard to ignore. Plus you get a powered tailgate, and the slightly firmer GR Sport suspension that somehow makes the ride more controlled.